And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is the author Ella LaBain, who during her near-death experience encountered Yeshua, who gave her orders which we will learn about today and more. Ella, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. It's good to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you, and if you don't mind, let's start on the day that you died and go from there.
Well, it was February 7th of 2010, so going on 14 years now, and I was going through a trauma and lost a lot of sleep, and so literally I didn't sleep for days. Almost a week. And so what happened was that I got adrenal exhaustion. I found this out after the fact, so at least I could fill in the gaps for you here, and which caused too much cortisol to be running through my bloodstream, which created a heart attack. So that's what happened on February 7th, and I, was rushed to the emergency room, and the heart was going 184 or something like that. So they put me on a machine, and I blacked out. And that's when I saw my mother and father, who are both deceased. My mother passed when I was 6 years old, 1967. Now you know how old I am. And then my father passed in 2007, and I saw both of them. So I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I must be dead because that and they were very, together. And then a hand basically took me, and they sort of faded, and it was just, and then I recognized him, and he was Yeshua. Because I had seen him in 1979, in July of 1979, in the Negev desert, right after I graduated from Sde Boker in Israel. And he showed up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in broad daylight, in the heat of the day, came out of the sun and basically said, I am the Messiah, follow me. So I was 18 years old. I was gobsmacked. I was like, okay. And then he just disappeared. So that began my journey with him, or his journey with me, because he was watching me, all the events that happened in my life. He was in and out. So when I saw him on February 7th, I recognized, I knew exactly who he was. He was very familiar to me. He felt like my real father. Like he wasn't my biological father, he just felt like he was my eternal father. So we walked hand in hand, and it was just the two of us, and it was this emerald green field, grass with a bluebird sky in the background, and that was it. It was just him and I and that, and walked and talked, and he told me a lot of stuff. And one thing that stuck in my head when I became conscious again was about my books. So I was writing a book that was about discerning ETs, aliens, or angels, because in the 1990s I used to teach these classes in this metaphysical bookstore in Florida called the Wings of Light, and I was doing weekly classes, and I used to do cruise ships and just basically trying to figure out what was going on with alien abductions. And this was my interest for many years. But then I had a baby in 2000, so I shelved all of that. So, as she got more independent, I started to pull it off the shelf and started working on it again. And I was working on it when this happened. So that's why it was relevant. That's why he said, and his words were, I want you to rewrite your book with me in it. So I did. And it's turned into 6 books. And the 6th book should be out this year, God willing. It's being edited now, so you never know how long that's going to take. But this is just been my life's work. So I give you a little bit of background of where I come from. I'm from New York City. My father was an Orthodox Jew. My mother was an Italian Catholic, both first generation, so their families came over, immigrated to New York. And I was an only child. And both families kind of, were split and over the union. Okay. My father's family literally ripped their clothes in mourning and declared him dead when he married my mother. Okay. Because she was a shiksa, to the Jews, she's a Gentile, a non-Jew. And so they excommunicated him. And so they didn't recognize me when I was born. And so I was born under this sort of, that whole shadow thing. But I think, we come into this life choosing, knowing, agreeing, our family, our parents, the situation we're born into. And I also believe that, God gives us tools or codes to deal with all of that. So this was what I had to, learn. This has been my own personal journey. And so, long story short, both families were split over the religious stuff. I was born in 1961, so, it was still post-war and, baby boomer time and all of that. And my mother's family were Italian Catholics. They accepted my father, no problem. They accepted me, no problem. Okay, they tried to raise me Catholic. That's where the problem began. And so my mother died when I was 6. So after that, my father remarried a Jewish divorcee with 3 daughters. So I became a real life Cinderella. I had inherited 3 stepsisters. So I went from being an only child to being, the bottom of the totem pole there. And so they all decided to raise me Jewish. So they converted me at age 7 to make sure that there was no ambiguity, so that somebody wouldn't say something because my mother wasn't Jewish. And it's a lot of mishugas, let me tell you, in Judaism. But and so they sent me to Hebrew school. And then when I was 15, my stepmother and we didn't get along. And my oldest stepsisters had already moved to Israel, and they suggested I come. So they sent me to Israel to complete my education, and I did. And I came back, besides a degree in social sciences and biology, with Yeshua. And they couldn't accept that because Yeshua is basically who people call Jesus. So they excommunicated me. So you see the family pattern? It's like it's a generational curse. So, having to deal with that, first my father had to deal with it. But then when he married my stepmother, his family, resurrected him from the dead. Okay, because she was Jewish. So then all of a sudden they accepted me because now, and because they converted me. So now I'm like part, you know what I mean? So the whole thing was just, so I grew up with all these questions over religion, okay, over who God is, why there's so much division, why there's so much dichotomy, why, and the only thing I had from my biological mother was this gold cross that, I just kind of inherited, like it was something it was a piece of jewelry. And I used to just play with it as a child. And my stepmother would come in and grab it out of my hands and say, "We don't do that in this house." So, as a young child, I was imprinted with all this, like, what's so wrong about all of this? I don't understand. So all these questions that I had as a child led me down these rabbit holes as an adult. And because I kept seeing Yeshua, and I've seen him 6 times in my life, and one of them was the near-death experience, I knew that he was real, okay? That he was alive, that he's still alive, that he can walk, just appear and disappear and show up on different planes. Like, I believe that when I had my near-death experience, like, I didn't go into the courts of heaven like some people have experienced. I went on this, like, sort of in-between plane, and it was just him and I. And I know and he, and obviously I wasn't ready, okay, to pass over, because he had given me marching orders to relay all this information that I have now processed and published in my book series, Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo. So, which is nonfiction, which is basically discerning who the cast of characters of gods are in the Old Testament, because that's been hidden and lost in mistranslation from Hebrew to English. So that's like book 2 just covers that. And then who are the aliens? Because I was having experiences since I was the age of 2 with gray aliens. And then I saw, little blue men. And then when I married my husband, who we've been married now for 33 years. He's a Brit. And we met on a cruise ship out of Florida. And as soon as I got together with him, I started having experiences with human ETs, blondes and brown-haired humans. They weren't all blonde. Some of them had looked just like you, just short brown hair and tall. And, they wore these blue suits, and they would just show up. They, like, the first time they would come through the wall. I was staying with my husband. Well, at the time he was my boyfriend, fiance, and in a hotel, and they just came right through the wall, and it was like right over me above the bed. And that was the first time. And then there was like this drum. I felt this, heard this like drum sound, and then this light came over me, and it felt like they were x-raying me. It felt like an x-ray machine, like the light just went right through me. And it felt like they came to check me out, and then they left. But that was only the first time. I would see them, on a regular basis. Long story short, I had all these miscarriages, and one time we caught it right away and went to the emergency room, and this was in 1995, and I was married. My husband and I were married, and they told us, they said, oh, well, you had a miscarriage. They told me to scoop everything up, because it ended up in the toilet. I did, in a Ziploc bag. Sorry to gross you out, but that's what happened. And they analyzed everything, and they told me that I was pregnant, and they were astonished that everything came out intact. They usually, with miscarriages, they have to do like D&Cs on women. They didn't have to do that on me, because it said everything came out intact. The only thing that was missing was the fetus. So, I mean, that started me down this rabbit hole of what the heck is going on? What happened to me? Why was this happening all along? So these were things that were leading up to my near-death experience. So when I had the near-death experience, he showed me what the truth was for me, like what was happening to me, what was behind each of these things that caused me depression, confusion. It was my journey. So I found out, okay, so back to that 1995 event, after I got home from the hospital, And they determined that I was 8 weeks. It was 8 weeks into the pregnancy. Like they could tell from the tissue and all of that. And I, hormonal changes, and I'm just lying in the middle of the day, on the couch, crying my eyes out. Why is this happening to me? What happened? What went wrong? And then this being shows up at the edge of my, the couch that I was sitting on in the middle of the day, broad daylight. This beautiful, white skinned, white hair, big blue eyes, kind of gaunt, pointy chin face, and it and almost like this feminine energy, and just kept beaming this warm light to me, like trying to comfort me because I was crying, and said, "Thank you." Those are the words. Thank you. We're the reason why this happened. You'll understand one day. And then just disappeared. So I'm like, okay, this is just like, that was like, okay, another piece. So fast forward back to 2007 when I saw Yeshua, and he said he wanted me to rewrite my book with him in it. Then he started to show me things, and he showed me that there's a war. This is a spiritual battle over us, over humans, over Earth, over portals, over the Earth is divided into all these portals. There's ancient space portals that are still being fought over, such as Jerusalem. And I met Zechariah Sitchin in 1995. 1995 was a big year for me, just as 2007 was. So they seem to be connected, and I started to study. He allowed me to interview him. I met him at a conference, May 27th, 1995, in Washington, D.C. It was called When Cosmic Cultures Meet. And at that time, I was doing these classes, ETs, aliens, or angels, and I thought I wanted to be a reporter or a journalist, so I was collecting interviews. But that wasn't my path. But I still have the interviews, and I learned a lot. And then I started to follow him. And then he came, and I moved to Colorado in 96. And then he started to come here. And he was here 3 times, and I met with him, and, we did lectures here. And I just got into his material and started unpacking. And I also joined his international Bible study group. So that's my background, why I connect these dots to the Sumerian and stuff that he told me. So anyway, back to 2007. So when I'm walking and talking with Yeshua, and asking questions, and the one thing that also came very, very clear when I came conscious was, I'm coming back with Nibiru. Okay, so that was the other big statement that came out of my NDE. And so that got me to reopen all the material that I was studying from the 90s of Sitchin, because he wrote the book, The 12th Planet, which was basically about Nibiru. We wouldn't be calling it Nibiru if it wasn't for his translation of the cuneiform tablets, because up until that time, people were calling it Planet X. So I went into a deep dive on that. And so my 5th book, The Heavens, is all about Nibiru. So that's all my research, the background, the history, the current events, and the cover-up. Okay, so I found that the UFO cover-up, the truth embargo, as we also like to call it, is interrelated and interconnected with the cover-up of Nibiru from the U.S. government. And how do we know that? Well, it started in 1983 under the Reagan administration, when NASA sent IRIS out to the edge of the solar system and came back with a photograph of Nibiru. And they showed it to Ronald Reagan. And at the time, he was involved with creating the SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, which he dubbed Star Wars. Those were his words. And they felt like this was something that was a national security issue. And so he put this in an executive order under national security that they had to delete all words that were associated with Nibiru. Okay. So in my 5th book, I kind of give this background of what happened with Sitchin and how he was threatened by the powers that be, okay, because of his knowledge about this. And so a very important meeting happened between him and the NASA chief astronomer, Robert S. Harrington. And Robert S. Harrington was in charge of all the space telescopes, and they were tracking Nibiru. Okay, so Sitchin comes from the past, and Harrington comes from the present, and they agreed to get together and corroborate their research, and they agreed, okay, on almost everything. And there was just a few little discrepancies about like the sector of space where it was coming through. They all agreed it's coming from the southwest under the the equator, and then it was coming from the Virgo Libra sector. Okay, so this was a big milestone, especially for Sitchin, because he was validated, and also there was corroboration with technology, the space technology. So one thing led to another, and the powers that be did not like what was going on. And Robert S. Harrington, age 50, comes down with some rare form of esophageal cancer and dies. Just like that. And so Sitchin was clearly shaken by that. And like I said, the powers that be threatened him and said, we'll shut you down, because he was doing lectures all over the place on his books. And he's written 12 books, the Earth Chronicles, and the 12th planet was all about Nibiru. That was the first one. And if you tell anybody, when you give them a date, when this is coming through, we're going to shut you down. So he never, ever mentioned a date. In fact, he was always very tight-lipped about that. And that was the number one question everyone used to ask in his lectures. When is this happening? And he would say, well, it's not in my lifetime. And he was right, because he passed away in 2010. So I had my near-death experience in 2010. And so there was some kind of, I don't know what, eclipse thing going on, but this is what I was told, that Yeshua, Jesus Christ, the second coming, whatever you want to call it, is going to happen, and it's going to coincide with the return of Nibiru. So that opened up this whole new area of research for me. I never even thought of that. I never connected those dots, but that's what he told me.
Ella, thank you for sharing that information. You've gave us some amazing things to think about, and I have a ton of questions. First of all, what did Yeshua look like?
Well, I'm a writer, not an artist. I wish I could draw him. There are some pictures that are out there that other people have done that I would say, yes, that's really close. And I could show it to you, but he had long hair. He had sort of like a copper colored skin. Okay. Wasn't white, wasn't brown, sort of tan, very typical Israeli Semitic looking person. Okay. Brown eyes, kind of like a classic Jewish nose, which, a lot of Jews always joke about, but that's That's what he looked like. Very kind, very compassionate looking, like his face kind of exudes who he is. I mean, I could show you some photos that look really close. Okay. But dark, brown eyes, kind of light brown hair.
Since Yeshua is returning with Nibiru, does that mean to you that Yeshua is some sort of ET?
Oh, absolutely. He's extraterrestrial by his own admission. His words, which are written in the New Testament, the red letter, you can read all of his words. He said, I am not from this world. My kingdom is not from this world. By very definition of those words, that is extraterrestrial. Okay. And I unpack these words in my books because words matter. And so many people say, oh, Jesus is an alien. No, he's not an alien, because an alien, by very definition, is a non-human intelligence. He's very human. That's why he was called the Son of Man and the Son of God. So he's like a demigod, like he was half God, half man. Okay. But he was definitely human. So, and because he's not, his kingdom is not of this world, that's extraterrestrial. He is not of this world, that's extraterrestrial, but he's still human. He's not an alien. Okay. So those words matter because when we talk about aliens are non-human. Okay. And people immediately think, oh, an alien comes from another planet or out there in the cosmos, in the galaxy. But I prove in my first book that the aliens that most of us have had experiences with are coming from inside this planet. So there are aliens living amongst us. That's why it's called the alien presence, because they're here. Okay. So that doesn't mean that the ETs aren't here too. They come and go, but he and his kingdom and his whole entourage, because it says he's coming back. He's not going to be alone. He's coming back with the hosts of heaven. So what does that mean? So in Hebrew, the words are Adonai Tzibaot. So Tzibaot is a Hebrew word for armies, celestial armies. And Adonai means Lord or commander. Okay, so he commands these celestial armies. So who are these celestial armies? Well, these are the hosts of heaven, which is the extraterrestrials, also called angels. I mean, on my third book, Who Are the Angels? I basically prove that the angels that are in the Bible, most of them are all men. There was only one incident where there was a female, but most of them all showed up as men, human men. Okay. They are extraterrestrials. We can call them angels because the word, angelos is Greek, which was translated from Hebrew, which were the malachim, which basically all means messengers. So the word angel, and a lot of us got sort of indoctrinated or imprinted by Renaissance art. So the medieval Renaissance artwork shows the angels with the wings, and they're all like winged and haloed and everything. And so people think, oh, an angel has to have wings. But the fact that the artists depicted them with wings doesn't necessarily mean that they had these appendages as wings, but that they had the ability to fly. It was like it was a message in the artwork, okay, that they can come and go, that they can move through dimensions, because that's what the Bible tells us, the record. The Bible is a historical reference, not just, a book that has been used for different religions, but we have record of extraterrestrial contact and interaction with humans. And each time they showed up, they showed up as men, and they came in and then they disappeared. So they have some sort of ability to move through dimensions. Okay. But the end time prophecy about when the hosts of heaven return with the Lord of hosts, who is Yeshua, okay, from the four corners of the universe, these are celestial armies. So, you can use your imagination and think, okay, well, who are they? And the scripture describes them coming on white horses. So I've thought this whole thing about, well, wait a second, horses don't fly. Okay, right? I ride horses here in Colorado, and you may feel like you're flying when you're on a horse, but horses don't fly. And nowhere does it say anything about, oh, the horses had wings and they flew. But this was biblical vernacular for spaceships, because even today we measure our um, uh, automobiles, even boats, how much horsepower it has. That how good the engine, how fast it goes, or even airplanes as well. So I think that John wrote down horses. Maybe it's because they looked like horses, but they're really space chariots, which are spaceships. Okay, that's my understanding of it. I could be wrong. I mean, if flesh and blood horses come out of the sky, I mean, everybody better just duck, because that's like, oh, I don't know how that's going to go over.
Well, it's my understanding that the ETs from Nibiru are the Anunnaki. Is that true? And if so, would Jesus be one of them?
Well, yes, and so before I create confusion here, let me just say that the timing, okay, of the passage of Nibiru. Now I have gone into very deep research here, and this is not just one planet. This is a system. So we are part of a binary star system. Our sun, we grew up believing that we just have one sun, but most stars in the universe are binary. Some are even trinary. But ours does have a binary twin, which is a brown dwarf star, and it's dead. Okay, it died a long time ago, but it has 7 planets that are in its orbit. And it's like a cosmic dance. And every 2,000 years or so, some of those planets bump into our space. They intersect and interlope in our solar system. So I proved in my 3rd book that during the time of the crucifixion of Christ, okay, the Bible record says that, he was crucified at like noon, okay, and then for 3 hours it went dark in the middle of the day. So what the heck happened there? That cannot be a normal solar eclipse, because our normal solar eclipses don't last, they just usually don't last more than 10 minutes, right? Okay, start to finish. I mean, especially if it's a total and there is darkness for that time. This was 3 hours. That's what the record says. So what could have caused that? So what I proved through my research is that one of the planets of what I call the Nemesis Nibiru system. So the brown dwarf star is Nemesis. And Nibiru is only one of 7 of its planets. And Nibiru is the one that is different than all the rest. It's elongated, it's tilted, it doesn't play well with the others. It doesn't have a normal orbit pattern. The rest of these planets around Nemesis orbit normally, like we would think, okay, it goes around in a circle, okay, in a certain, time period. This is like tilted. And because Nibiru is tilted, that's why it ends up bumping into our solar space every time it comes around, which is now Sitchin wrote and discerned based on the cuneiform tablets that it was 3,600 years, lunar years, not Earth years. So that translates to 3,567 Earth years. So we're due, okay? We are due for another flyby passage. But what I found out was it's not so much that Nibiru is going to pass Earth and take, on its way, on its trip around the sun, because it goes twice. So it's coming from outside the solar system. It's going to go into our solar system, go around our sun, pass our Earth once, and then again, as it goes around the sun is going to catapult it back out into its orbital space, and it will pass the Earth the second time. The Bible record says that when this happens, the Earth is going to flip and turn. The Lord says in Isaiah 24 that the Earth is going to turn upside down, which is biblical vernacular for pole shift. So we already see the beginning of that, because our north magnetic pole has moved 42 degrees. So it used to be at the Canadian Arctic, and now it's in Siberia, Russia. Okay, so and that's because the Earth has a wobble, and each time we get hit with these like really intense earthquakes, 8s and 9s, the Earth kind of gets nudged off of the axis. Sometimes it shaves about 20 seconds off of our day. And we started seeing this in like 2004. Remember when we had that big earthquake in Chile, and then there was a tsunami, the Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, 2004. The Earth shifted then. And people were saying, oh, wow, it feels like, time is speeding up. And it is. Okay. So this is the basis of my final book in the series is about how time has been manipulated, okay, through the calendars, even us, right? Right now we're on the Gregorian calendar, which has absolutely no astronomical relevance whatsoever, because it was installed by Rome. Okay, so all the other calendars are aligned with celestial objects, the sun, the moon. The Mayan calendar is aligned with the galactic sun. So there's astronomical relevance. The Gregorian calendar has none. And the Bible tells us that the Antichrist changes the times and the seasons. Okay, and I know I'm going into a whole nother realm here about who the Antichrist is, but I will suffice to say that the end time prophecy the Vatican, the ancient Church of Rome, plays a starring role in all of this. Okay, so they have changed times and seasons, which is why this year, 2024, next month, we're going to have a leap day. And why do they do that? Because they're missing 25% of the day every year. Okay, so they have to catch up with so they add a day every 4 years because there's a quarter of a day missing. It's nuts. It makes no sense. It's not mathematical. It's not astronomical. Why we can't just go back to how the ancients did it. So without getting too into the weeds here, because you and your reader and your audience can read about it, okay, all the little minutiae, is that when we're trying to track this ancient system, okay, they were recording it based on a different time system from the past. Okay, that's why the lunar years are translated into Earth years. And to them, now here's a scripture in the Bible where the Lord says, a day is like 1,000 years unto the Lord, and 1,000 years is like a day. Well, doesn't that sound like time travel to you?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so the Sumerians said that Nibiru comes around one shar. They called their year a shar. So to them, it's 1 year. To us, it's 3,567. Okay, so the last time this happened was around the time of the Exodus in the Old Testament. So we can go back to that time period and we say, well, what was going on then? And see that all these events that were prophesied for this end times. And what do we mean when we say end times? We're talking about a processional age. So Yeshua said to his disciples that he was returning at the end of this age. He was born at the beginning of the age, and that is the precessional age of Pisces. So in astrology, astronomy, astrology used to be one and the same. Okay, my final book is all about this, by the way, how to tell time. So they basically, you know, the zodiac goes forward, right? So like right now we're in Capricorn, then we're going to go to Aquarius, then we're going to go to Pisces. The precessional ages go in reverse. So we go from Pisces to Aquarius to Cap, you understand? So we are at the end of the age of Pisces. Okay, so that's how we know where we're at. We can't, when people say, well, what, give me a date. It's like, you can't give people dates because the calendars have been manipulated. Time itself has been manipulated. Okay, so you have to go based on this old system, okay, and also the prophetic calendar. So that's what I use. So the prophetic calendar tells us where we're at, and we're very close, but we still have a whole nother chapter to move through before the final battle and the end of this age, when both Yeshua and Nibiru returns. Now, just because he told me that he's coming back with Nibiru doesn't mean that he's from Nibiru. That doesn't mean that he's an Anunnaki. Okay, it just means that his return is coinciding with the return of this ancient planet that intersects in our solar system every 3,567 years. Okay, but there's other planets in that system that also intersect, that seem to mark the crucifixion of Christ, and that is that big blue planet. So the Hopis, so the Hopi prophecy is also relevant here, because the Hopi Indians said, when you see the blue Kachina, know that the red Kachina is going to follow. And the blue Kachina, and we know that there's this big, gigantic, 5 times the size of Jupiter planet that's blue-black. And our astronomers today have called that planet 9. And it can only really be seen in infrared, and it hangs out at the edge of our solar system. And that's the planet that eclipsed the sun during the crucifixion of Christ, approximately 2,000 years ago. So Nibiru is red. It's because of the red iron oxide, and it's also called a comet planet because it has 2 tails. So that's why it's always been depicted with wings. The ancient Egyptians had this big red disc with wings. The ancient Persians, the same thing, the big red disc with wings. I mean, it's literally etched in stone in the ancient world. So, and we saw it, okay? We're not like imagining it anymore, because we have physical telescopic evidence of it. That was what NASA's IRIS brought back and showed Reagan in 1983. And it was, at the edge coming into our solar system. So here's another piece that I want to add to this mix. And for years I thought, Nibiru is going to pass the Earth. It is. But we, the Earth, okay, are moving. We are on an orbital pattern too. So the Earth, we are going to move into Nibiru's debris field, okay? And we're on a trajectory, okay? We can't change the pattern that the Earth is going around. So here's the thing with this system is that, when people think of comets, you see the head, and then you see the tail, and the head goes first and the tail comes second. Everything about this is the opposite. So the tail in Nibiru, the tail precedes the planet itself. It's like a parade. Okay, the parade precedes, the the royalty coming, or like that. So what is this parade? It's a parade of meteorites and fireballs and comets and asteroids and a whole lot of space junk that it seems to attract in the tails. So in the 1940s, Carlos Muñoz Ferrada, he was so accurate in his tracking of, he called it Hercules, which is the Greek name for it. Okay, so all the cultures had their own names. Hercules is Greek, the red dragon is Chinese, Nibiru is Sumerian, the ancient Hebrews called it the Messianic Red Star. So when I found that, I didn't know that until after my NDE, when Yeshua told me he was coming with Nibiru, and I'm like, oh, okay, so it's actually in the Torah and the Zohar, and they called it the Messianic Red Star. So that was a corroboration to me, So he's coinciding with it, but that doesn't necessarily mean he comes from it. It just means that in terms of this battle, which we're in over Earth and who gets to control this space, he's coming to resolve that. Okay. And he's also coming to set up his kingdom on Earth. So that's the quintessential end time prophecy, is the return of Christ and his kingdom through this, what I call this mothership, the New Jerusalem, which is in, the book of Revelation. And it's described as this big city that comes out of space that lands over a scorched Jerusalem, because it says in the end times that the Gentiles are going to trample over Jerusalem. Everything is going to be scorched because of this end time war that happens there. Okay. And, what's going on in Israel is the beginning of this. In fact, if you look at the books of Ezekiel 36, Ezekiel 37 have been fulfilled. And that was the return of the state of Israel, and all the Jews going back to that land after 1800 years in diaspora, and the land was in a drought for 1800 years. Nobody believed that could happen again. But that's what the book of Ezekiel said was going to happen, that this valley of the dry bones, which was in the middle of Israel, was going to rise again, and they were going to be reborn, and they were going to have a great army again, and they were going to take over the land again, and they were going to see that the Lord is their king. So this whole end time battle scenario has a confluence of layers to it, as to who is the true Messiah. Like, remember that show in the 60s? Like, will the real so-and-so please stand up? Right? What's their name? Remember that? And that's what this is. It's like there's going to be a counterfeit Messiah that we will call the biblical Antichrist, that's going to have some sort of alien powers, because the Bible, the scripture says that he's going to have the power to pull fire down from heaven. Okay, well, that sounds like alien technology to me, and to a lot of other people who discern these scriptures. And look at what's happening. I mean, we're in disclosure right now. So, that genie is not going back in the bottle. All right. We can do the cha-cha. Okay. Last year we had some major milestones in the disclosure movement, right? With the July 26th hearing, and David Grush and whistleblowers, and Congress is now looking at it. There's been a little bit of a setback because of the Schumer bill, but that's okay. It's a cha-cha. We take 2 steps forward, 3 steps forward, 2 steps backwards. We're going to get there eventually. But this is what I've been telling everybody, is to not put all your eggs in one basket, meaning that disclosure is not limited to the U.S. government. Okay, so we have, so this is Chaim Eshed's book, from to the universe and beyond, which he put out in 2020. He came out at the end of 2020 as a whistleblower. The retired Israeli space chief, who at 88, he was 88, I think in 2020. So now he's probably in his 90s. But and basically said, yeah, we are in contact with the Galactic Federation, he called it. And not only him, but not only Israel, but the United States are in working agreements with the Galactic Federation. And Trump knew about it. And they have joint bases on Mars. That's what he said. And of course, 2020 was the shutdown and the pandemic, and everybody went, huh, like that, right? Because it was like, okay, now what else is going to happen, because we were all like oppressed by all these controls. And so some people just didn't take it seriously. But he went and told, the Yedidot Achronot, which is kind of like the equivalent of the New York Times here, and which is the Israeli newspaper. And then they took the whole interview and then they published it in the journalist published it with him in this book. So this book you can only get in Hebrew and in paperback. You can't even get the PDF where you could stick it through a translator. So I was able to get like about 15 pages of excerpts from this and in English, which if somebody, I'm offering it to anyone who buys my book, because I published his remarks in my first book, Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo, the 4th edition, which was published in August of 23. But I didn't come across this until afterwards. So I'm adding it as a free addendum kind of thing with a book purchase. So if anyone is interested, just email me. Even if you purchase the PDF off my website, I'll still send it to you. And it's very revealing. Okay, so disclosure is not limited to the U.S. government. And according to Bible prophecy, there will be an alien invasion. Okay, at the end, and it's not coming from outer space; it's coming from inside the Earth. So in my first book, I go into all this like beings that are coming out of the Earth, that are living in the Earth, that perhaps went into the belly of the Earth, the caverns, the caves, everything after the floods. There were 2 floods. Okay, so the Bible starts off with Genesis 1:1, and the Spirit hovered over the waters of the earth. That was after the first flood, which I call Lucifer's flood from Dake's Bible, which was the sinking of the ancient civilizations of Atlantis and Lemuria. So the very same thing that happened, that caused Atlantis and Lemuria to sink, happened again. So we see that history repeats itself. And what was that? They were mixing and matching different DNA, crossing species, and creating miscreants and hybrids and Nephilim. The Bible calls it Nephilim, which in Hebrew means fallen or rejects or miscreants. All of those words work. And so the Creator God was angered by this because they were going against the laws of creation. So he sent floods to destroy them. So according to Plato and according to different records, the original city of Atlantis disappeared. It didn't go under, it went up. It was a mothership that opened up over the earth and created this city, and then all the other cities and towns were built around it. They went under. Okay, so this mothership went up. So I don't know this for sure, but this is my hypothesis, is that because of the timing of this, and let's go back to the precessional ages. The last time, when I was telling you earlier, we're at the end of the age of Pisces. So let me just explain what that means. So when we switch ages, it's governed by our sun. So our sun has to rise on the vernal equinox in the stars of Aquarius for us to be officially in the age of Aquarius. So we've been singing about this since the 60s, right? The age of Aquarius. And we are in the dawning of it, because if you take like the hour before sunrise, you know, you get dawn, you get light, but the sun isn't really above the horizon yet, right? For at least an hour before it starts to get light. Using that as an analogy to where we're at in terms of processional age. So we know we can measure this now. So we know that this past vernal equinox, the sun rose at 3 degrees of Pisces. And remember, we go backwards. So we go 3, 2, 1, 0. So when it gets to 0, that's when it's at that point where it's about to go into the beginning of the stars of Aquarius. So it's an arbitrary line in space. Okay. I mean, you know, how many angels can you fit on the head of a pin kind of a thing? So let's suffice to say that is the beginning, the 0 point, because we have 30 degrees for each sector, but we don't count 1 to 30, we count 0 to 29. Okay, so that begins the beginning, that 0 point, because then the next point will be 29, Aquarius. So we're blending stars. So that's the beginning, and that's when he returns. He said at the end of that age, end of this age that he was born, which is Pisces, and Pisces is the fish, and the fish was all, you know, represents the church age and represents Christianity, etc. So back to this. So when we go into Aquarius, I looked this up. When was the last time we had an age of Aquarius? During the times of Atlantis and Lemuria, approximately 24 to 26,000 years ago. So we are going to come full circle very soon to what was happening on the earth back then, which is why we have movies now like Aquaman, which are focusing on the lost city of Atlantis, which is underground inside the earth. And I have this moniker, you know, the truth is stranger than fiction, because I believe that they are putting these extraterrestrial concepts, which we call soft disclosure, as opposed to hard disclosure. Hard disclosure would be like a government official coming out and saying something. This is soft disclosure. It's inserted into science fiction films and entertainment, because this is a way that people can, you know, absorb and understand these concepts, so that when it does happen, we have something to relate to, and it's not so shocking. Okay, and I don't know if anyone's following this, but if you can't see Aquaman 2 unless you've seen Aquaman 1, so you got to catch up with that. And then Aquaman 2. So in my first book that I republished in August, I came across during my republication of this declassified document that was a letter that was written by Robert Oppenheimer, also coincidental that his movie came out in July of 23, Oppenheimer. I came across this in March of 23, and it was a letter written by Robert Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein to President Roosevelt after World War II. And what was this letter written? They were writing to him to change policies in the United Nations to incorporate extraterrestrials. So we know that they've been covering this stuff up since World War II. Okay, that this has really been this 75, 80-year truth embargo on the alien presence. So much so that they wanted to talk to the president about changing policies about it in the United Nations. Okay, so that's one piece. So let's fast forward to the 90s again. So I'm in the 90s. I'm doing my ETs, Aliens, or Angels classes, and I meet this man, Colonel Donald Ware, who became a whistleblower, okay, because he was living in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, and then the Gulf Breeze incident happened where they saw ships out of Gulf Breeze in Florida, and he was a retired Air Force colonel, and him and I became fast friends, and he, came and talked to my group and wrote for my newsletter, and he told me stuff. And one thing he told me was, in the future, the United Nations was going to be transformed. And I never forgot that. Okay, he told me this in like 1994. And he said, yes, you'll see, because there's going to be an alien group that is going to somehow become part of this. And um, and they're going to want to transform the United Nations into a type of United Federation of Planets, similar to Star Trek. Remember? So truth is stranger than fiction. That's the reason why we have some of these sci-fi film and TV series, to help us to get used to these concepts and ideas. But he told me that as a matter of fact, because he became a whistleblower, and this was somehow inside information. I don't know. Okay, so I couldn't corroborate or anything, so I just parked it in the back. Then I come across this document in March of 23, and I'm like, oh my God, that's what Donald Ware told me in 1994. So I published it. So it's in my first book that just came out and republished in August of 23. Then Aquaman comes out on Christmas of 23. Okay, I'm very excited to see it because I follow it and all of that. And I don't know if I was more excited to see the ending or to see the movie, because that's, and I don't want to ruin it for you, for your audience, but that's how they end it. Okay, is that the alien nation inside the earth that is part of the ancient civilization of Atlantis comes to the surface and joins the United Nations, and they become this one group. And Aquaman is the spokesperson and speaks to the world about it. It's astonishing. Where did they get this information from? So, and this is why I've been saying for years that science fiction writers are somewhat prophetic, because whether they're picking up on it from the morphogenetic field, or, they're just getting these ideas, or someone is talking to them, or someone's handing them these scripts, maybe it's a confluence. Maybe it's all of the above.
During your NDE, Jesus made you aware of your truth. And is part of your truth two things? Were you an ET pre-birth? And second, was the miscarriage due to you having some sort of alien hybrid baby?
Yes, that's exactly what's going on. Is that's what I was abducted for, to be used in the alien hybridization program. So I published this in this new version of my first book. What I added to it was what's behind the alien abductions. And there are several programs. It's not all one thing. Okay. So the program that I was involved with was the alien hybridization program. But there's other programs that people are in. So I don't want people to think it's all one thing. And that is, implants and changing society, because when we use the word abduction, okay, it connotes kidnapping, right? So like in our day, right, you can get an alert and it's like, oh, some kid's just been abducted. They've been kidnapped, right? And how many of these kids actually get found dead or alive? Okay, like remember back in the 80s, they put them on milk cartons. Where is this person? Have you seen this person? Now they're on Walmart boards. When you go into Walmart, they're on the boards. So I was always intrigued and disturbed by that. What happens to these kids? And, and there's statistics you can look up, that there's a large percentage of them that are basically taken from other family members because they're in the middle of domestic disputes and stuff like that, family stuff. And then there are others that never get found, dead or alive. Okay, what happens to these kids? Well, we know that there's file networks and trafficking, and then there's even another, and I was like, as if that's not bad enough. Then I found out that there's even another level of it, where some of them actually get taken inside the earth and they're underground and they're used in all kinds of programs that are very disturbing. Okay. So that's one aspect of it. So I don't say, so what happened to me, obviously I wasn't taken underground, but and these were that's why I call them temporary kidnappings, because when the aliens abduct people from their bed, they're basically taking your etheric body, which they know how to do. So think Star Trek for a minute, okay? So you know how Star Trek, there's they demolecularize you and then remolecularize you when you go through the transporter? Similar to that, where they're able to take your essence, your etheric body, because they know how we're created. They know how we're made. So I am not in my body. My body is in me. So our bodies are like these big eggs that have like 7 layers to them. That's our etheric body. So when this body, this physical flesh body, ceases to exist, that's the body that gets transported into the other side. That's the essence of who we are. That's our soul energy. Okay. And so, I am a soul having a human experience. When that human experience is over, the soul moves on, right? Or goes over and still stays intact, hopefully. Okay. I mean, some people's souls are fractured and lost and stolen, and all kinds of horrible things happen. But that's the essence. So the aliens understand how we're created. So they are able to extract this energy and remolecularize us in their ship and do whatever they do, the experiments, the extraction of eggs and sperm and skin grafts and DNA for their experiments. And they can also implant into these 7 layers of our etheric body and then put us back. So it's not a true abduction in the sense of like kids getting abducted where they never get seen again, or they're kidnapped and they never get seen again, or they're held for ransom. We get put back. So so I'm calling them temporary abductions, because at the most you're gone for like 3 hours, or you go to sleep, you wake up, you're still there. And if you're sleeping with your partner in the same bed, and you have, and this is very common in experiencers, is that they have these experiences, they're going through all this stuff, and then their partner is in bed and they go, well, I never saw you left, you've been here all along. Okay, so what's that about? So they're taking a piece of us and they're remolecularizing us on the ship. And this is all like, you can get into all the whole like hypnagogy and consciousness, and how you can do stuff to people when they're under this deep state, almost like hypnosis, but like one level deeper than hypnosis, and that's what they do. So they do stuff like implants, or they do other things, and then they forget about it, forget about it. Like they don't, like you don't remember a thing until you do, until it starts to seep in. And it's like, wait, what a second, what happened there? Was it missing time? How come I woke up and I got bruises on my inner thigh? What happened? I wasn't, you weren't together with somebody, you didn't have this, you didn't knock into anything, but that's what happens. Okay. Which means that there's a way to imprint into the physical. And metaphysically speaking, when people want to create things, it all happens in this other realm first. That which is seen is created by that which can't be seen. So then it manifests into the physical. And I think they're using those laws and those concepts. So that's what I mean when I'm trying to discern between, the different programs, because they're temporary abductions as opposed to the other types of kidnappings. Now, the first question you asked, I think I answered the second part. The first one was,
were you an ET pre-birth?
okay. So here's my take on that. Short answer is yes. partly. I would say I'm more of a hybrid. Okay, so there's a piece of that in me, but it's not 100%. But here's where, so my heritage, and this is what I traced. So I've had my DNA analyzed, okay, and I've traced this based on my research. And this is a piece that is coming up now, and that is who the Hebrews are. So the Jewish piece, the Jewish DNA is starseed, is extraterrestrial. And how do I know that? So it goes way back to Atlantis again. So they were called the Huvas or the Huvids. And that's where you get the word Hebrew from, because the V and the B are the same letter in both Aramaic and Sumerian, Aramaic, and Hebrew. Okay, so it's just a matter of pronunciation, which side of the, how you're going to speak. So that comes out of Atlantis. They came from it. They came out of Atlantis. They were inheritors of the land of Chem that emerged after the floods of Atlantis. And the land of Chem is where we get the word chemistry from, and that became the land of Egypt. Okay, so the Hebrews, the Israelites, they're all part of the same mix. And you have to ask yourself this question, okay? Why? Why were these people so heavily persecuted? Not only in the past, in the ancient past, because the Bible is the historical record of that, the stories, and the recent past, 80 years ago during World War II. Why do they want to genocide Jewish people off the face of the planet when Jewish people have contributed so much to this planet, right? Okay, so you wouldn't, first of all, Yeshua was Jewish. He literally Jewish because he came from the tribe of Judah. And that's where the word Jew comes from, Yehuda. So there's no J in the Hebrew language. The J was added in English in the 1700s to match the Y sound. So in Hebrew, it's Yah, Yehuda, Yehudi, Yeshua. There was no J. And then they added the J. In fact, I found out, and this blew my mind, that the first King James Bible, 1611, didn't even have the name Jesus in it. It was the Greek Latin Iesus. And then in the 1700s, when they republished it again, that's when they added the J. Okay, so all the J words, they're not Hebrew, they're English. And that's okay. I mean, you got to translate stuff. It's not, doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just, that's what it is. So yeah, he was from the tribe of Yehuda, which is where you get the word Jew from. And the ancient religion of Israel was Judaism, okay, which we call it that now, but it was probably called, they worship Yahuwah, who is the God of Israel. And Yahuwah's son was Yeshua. So Yeshua and Yahuwah, I proved this through linguistics, through the letters, that the name of the Father is in the Son. And that's what he said, I and my Father are one. And the Son came to be the physical manifestation of the Father, because the Father doesn't do that. He's above, and he stays out of the whole flesh stuff. This is the fleshly realm. And so all the dirty work is left for the Son. He's the one who comes into the flesh. He's the one who deals with all of that, and he did. And the other thing that I questioned was, what's up with the blood? Okay, why is there such an emphasis on blood? Okay, oh, he was the blood sacrifice, the blood, being Jewish, we're taught that, you're not supposed to believe in Jesus. It's considered idolatry. There's only one God. God doesn't split himself into three parts. But that, just because they say that, doesn't mean that they're right about that. Okay, it just means that they're, have a spirit of unbelief which creates cognitive dissonance, which blocks them from seeing these deeper mysteries and deeper truths. Because if you're God, you can do anything. Okay, so if you're God, you can be in 3 places, 4, 10 places. You can be with everyone at the same time. You can, and this is something that I learned about my near-death experience, because I started listening to other people who had near-death experiences, and I realized, oh, okay, I'm not so alone here. That a lot of people have had similar experiences to me, where they felt like it was just him and I. Like there was nobody else there. It was just the 2 of us. And he makes you feel that way because he's God, and he can. Okay, because that's his supernatural power. So if he's God, like who am I to question? Oh, if he's God, he can be 3 people in one. He can be a spirit. He can be manifesting in the physical. He can walk through a wall. He can come in and out of a portal. He can meet me on some, in between plane between here and the afterlife. Okay, so I am not in a position to question that or to be in unbelief because of my experiences, because I know that he has shown me. And maybe the reason why he showed me this is because I was orphaned at a young age. I was an only child. I was like, God, if you're there, show me, prove to me, because I went through a period of unbelief and also a lot of confusion about being fought over by both sides of my family, like which religion I was going to go to, and I remember when I was 13 and they were all fighting over me, and my father had me, I went through my bat mitzvah at age 13, and then my Catholic family wanted me to I don't know, go with them around graveyards to, with Catholic stuff that they did. And I was really kind of like, I don't want any of this. When I grow up, I'm going to marry a Protestant, I said. Because in my 13-year-old brain, I thought that was like the halfway point between being Jewish and Catholic. And guess what? You got to be careful what you wish for, because I did. So I married a Brit, and he's probably from the Church of England, which they're Protestant. So he's not religious, and neither am I. We're believers, we're on a spiritual path, and what he showed me, what Yeshua showed me about the religions, is all published in my books, is that it's not about the religion. It's about your relationship to me. And that's all that matters in the end, okay? Is not what you know, but who you know. Okay? So that's where I'm at. I know him. What else do I need to know? I mean, I know who he is, and I am in a relationship with him, hand to hand. He's my co-pilot in this life, so it doesn't really matter. And this is what killed him. What brought the events that brought to the crucifixion was what the Bible calls a religious spirit. It's a demon of religion. And I trace that this is an alien implant. And I actually show what it looks like, because I've seen it. And it looks like a cruciform, And then this summer, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm going to connect this dot, because, again, the truth is stranger than fiction. And they put stuff into films. And I went this summer to see Mission Impossible, and the whole plot was about this cruciform key. That was the key to start this nuclear, submarine and all of that. But that's the same shape. It's a sacred geometric shape that I saw in the etheric body as an implant, which I call a spiritual limitation device, which the aliens put into us to keep us divided over religion, okay? And it actually causes people to be stuck in their religions, okay? And in many different ways. Like, let's take Catholicism, for instance, okay? They consider themselves Christians. They're really not technically, because they follow the religion of Babylon. But here's something that they do that is considered voodoo, okay? Is that they continue to worship a crucified Christ. Christ crucified on the cross. You go into a Catholic church and you see him hanging on a cross. Okay, so what does that do? That immediately sends a message to your subconscious mind that you're powerless, that you don't have any power, and you're believing in a dead God. Okay, so that's how they keep them down, keep them suppressed, that they don't get to find their power. And they're always like, in this sort of victim consciousness role. The truth of the matter is, okay, there wouldn't be any Christianity if Christ died and never rose. He rose from the dead. He is alive. He's alive today as I live and speak to you. He's sitting here. He's with you. He's with me. Okay. And just because you can't see him doesn't mean he's not there. He's alive. And no one would have any belief of him in any way, in any of the denominations. None of this would be if he didn't rise from the dead. He'd just be like any other dead guy who died on a cross. And there were thousands of them. Okay. So the fact that he rose from the dead is what the faith is all about. Okay. And the fact that he promises to resurrect all of us, okay, in the end, that we all get resurrected from the dead, is what the faith is all about. Okay, so the Catholics are not seeing that. So that is what I call a spiritual limitation device. And it affects the subconscious mind, and it keeps people suppressed. So that's one. But what else I saw was an actual key, like a cruciform that looked just like what they had in the movie in Mission Impossible. And I show it in my PowerPoint presentations. I could send it to you if you want. You can insert it in here if you'd like. But they stick this stuff in our etheric body. So that keeps people suppressed. And it also keeps people away from this dynamic, intimate, fulfilling relationship with the living God. And religion gets in the way of that. The religious spirit crucified Yeshua. He overcame every single thing. He overcame that too through death, through the resurrection. But that was the spirit in the end. It was the Pharisees, okay, who had this position in their temple. The religion, they were threatened by him because he was able to do stuff they couldn't. He could raise the dead. He could heal the sick. He could cast out demons. He did miracles. Okay, he turned a piece of bread and a fish and he fed 5,000. He multiplied it and fed 5,000 people. So he had supernatural powers that they didn't, and they couldn't compete with that. So they conspired to get rid of him. Okay, with the government of Rome. Now, the Jews have been persecuted for 2,000 years as the killers of Christ, but they didn't actually kill him. Okay, they rejected him, but the Romans did the job. The Romans crucified him. Okay, and that's history. You can't deny that. So the end time prophecy comes together. It all comes full circle here, where he puts the people who did all that to him, that whole drama, that whole time when he was on there, they get reincarnated and they are back on the earth at the time he returns. And it says this in the book of Zechariah, chapter 12, and also in the book of Revelation, that they see him coming with the hosts of heaven, okay, all the horses and everything, and they mourn for the one whom they pierced. And the word piercing is biblical vernacular for crucifixion. He was pierced. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities, Isaiah 53. So they have a chance to repent and to see what they did and to be forgiven. And he promises that in the end, all of Israel will be saved. But this whole end time war, World War III, which is all about Israel, okay, 10 nations come against Israel, and they're all Muslim nations. It's the revived Roman Empire. come against Israel for World War III. And then this false Messiah rises up out of that. Okay. And it says in the book of Daniel that he makes a peace treaty between Israel and her enemies, and they have this 7 years. And then halfway through, all hell breaks loose. He allows the Jews, and they are just chomping at the bit, to build this third temple in Jerusalem. And what's blocking them is the Muslims. Muslims, because the Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, is on the site of the where the temple is supposed to be. So I questioned this because I, learned about this in the 80s. And I was like, how is that going to happen? I mean, they're never going to give in. I mean, these are just like two forces that are just stubborn in their positions. They're not crossing over. Okay. Something from out there has to come and intervene to make this happen. And what he showed me was that besides this war and destruction and all of that was going to happen, that there was going to be an earthquake that was going to shake this whole area up. And there is they do have quakes there. There is some kind of fault line under there. In fact, when Yeshua was crucified, that day, there was an earthquake. There was 3 hours of darkness, and then there was an earthquake. Okay, and so I published this in my 4th book, Covenants, about the blood that came down from the cross, ended up going into the crevices of the earth, and underground was the Ark of the Covenant. And that's where the blood ended up, which was considered like the mercy seat. Okay, so there's like a lot of connections to that I thought was really, really amazing, like, because there's no accident here. And they found it. So I published this. It's in book 4, if anyone's interested, of modern day Israel. Went down there. They've been looking for the Ark of the Covenant. There's 2, from what I have researched. One is in Ethiopia, and the other one is an underground in Jerusalem, which was under the old temple. And when that earthquake happened, so one of these researchers found it, and they worked with the Israelis, and they scraped this black goo, this black stuff that was on it, and they analyzed it. The Israeli government analyzed it, and it was blood. It was ancient blood, and it was DNA, and it was different. It wasn't human because it didn't have the same number of chromosomes that we do. So it showed that this was some otherworldly being, which, we believe was Yeshua. When that earthquake happened, the blood was drained out of him, went down there. It also says that he went into the belly of the earth and he preached in Sheol. In Hebrew, that is like the place of the dead. And he saved all these Jews that were dead underground there, okay, and brought them back. So when he rose from the dead 3 days later, they all rose from the dead too. How come nobody ever makes movies about this stuff? Okay, you only
Good point.
you only see the crucifixion and all that stuff. Like, oh, okay, but what about the resurrection? They're all coming out of their graves. It says so. It's right there in the Bible. It's not like, and this is the story. This is the record. So it's going to happen again, because it says that in 2 Thessalonians, and I published this as there's 3 parts to this, what a lot of people call the rapture. But it's the first rapture is the dead in Christ rise from inside the earth, and they meet the Lord in the air. That's the first rapture. The second is those who are left on the surface of the planet alive. Then they go up. But the scripture specifically uses the word after that, which is connotes another time, right? So we can only, and there's a lot of controversy about this in Christianity. Oh, pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib. I'm If anyone's asking, I'm pan-trib, because that means it's all going to pan out, just the way God planned it.
Ella, due to time, I have to change gears with you, but
Okay,
I think I
sure.
got to get you back because there's quite a few questions I never even got to. If people want to find out more about your Cosmic Zoo series, Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo, do they go to your website or to Amazon?
Both. Who's Who in the CosmicZoo.com, and you can find me on Amazon, all 5 books and Kindle, paperback, and I also sell the PDF on my website.
If people want to reach out to you and ask you questions, are you up for that?
Sure. There's a contact page on my website. Just send me a message and I'll email you back. It comes straight to my email.
Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
Heaven is coming to earth. And when that happens, the curse is broken. The curse on the earth, the curse on man, the curse on women, the curse on the animals, and we're heading into the age of Aquarius, which is the golden age, which is the millennial reign of Christ on earth.
Ella,
So that's something to be excited about.
Ella, thank you for your message, and thank
You're welcome.
you for being my guest.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.